It's exactly 21 days to the December 7 elections. Hello and welcome to Election Brief, proudly brought to you by Petrosol. And coming up in this edition, former Attorney General and Foreign Minister during the Rawlings administration, Dr. Obed Yao Asamoah, cast doubt on the possibility of NDC presidential candidate John Dramani Mahama winning the December 7 general elections.
It would be better for him to let the NDC elect a different person.
Also, will flag bearer of the National Democratic Party and widow of the late founder of the NDC, Nana Konadu Agyeman-Rawlings, still contest the 2020 presidential election in the wake of her husband's death? We will interrogate that on the show. Also, road accidents and deaths increase every election year due to political activities. The road safety authorities therefore calling on political parties to use their influence to help reverse the cycle. Will inform your vote if you live or work in the Asafo market in Kumasi.
Yeah, twaso ne say. We free. Ya news ka. O sare ya no afa bag no.
That's coming up on Voters' Voice. Election Brief is live on all our social media handles, including Instagram and Facebook. It's streaming live on the award-winning portal, myjoyonline.com, and also available on YouTube. It's brought to you by kind courtesy of Petrosol. Clean fuel in full quantity. Stay tuned in. Thanks once again for joining us on Election Brief. Now, a session of society have been asking whether former First Lady and flag bearer of the National Democratic Party, Nana Konadu Agyeman-Rawlings, will still contest the presidency in the light of her husband's death. General Secretary of the National Democratic Party, Alhaji Mohammed Frimpong, joins us with more on this particular issue. But first, listen to former National Security Advisor, Brigadier General Nunu Mensah, asking former First Lady Nana Konadu Agyeman-Rawlings and the flag bearer of the NDP to, as a sign of respect for her dead husband, withdraw from this year's presidential race. He spoke to my colleague, Kwesi Parker-Wilson.
If I were here, I would not stand.
You will not stand?
No, if I were here.
You won't proceed with the ambition of doing that?
I think that if she was to ask me, I would say, Madam, it's okay, call it off. You know,
as a respect to contest in this.
Yes, as a respect to your husband, because I asked President Rawlings, as the president, your daughter is standing for the NDC at Osuklote. Right. You're going to vote for Mahama as president. Your wife is also standing. So which one of them were you going to vote for? I asked him, he didn't answer me. You put in a very awkward position. The daughter is standing for the NDC. The husband is standing on his own right. So, presidential election, which should he vote for? The wife or the daughter's party?
So he was going to be in a difficult position.
It is. He didn't answer the question. So the wife should save him from that embarrassment by pulling out.
Alhaji Mohammed Frimpong is General Secretary of the NDP. He joins me in studio. So you heard Brigadier General Nunu Mensah there. Your reaction to what he said?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to your viewers. In the first place, General Nunu Mensah's statement or declaration is not supported in any way, because if he says based on tradition, we would say that there's no tradition that links political activity, and for that matter, standing as a presidential election, so that if a spouse's, at the demise of a spouse, then it means the other should, maybe step aside as a mark of respect or a sign of what do you call it? A sign of respect in the memory of their spouse. So that is it. I think the Constitution is clear. If we look at the Constitution, chieftaincy, which is the very center of tradition, is very well insulated, in matters of governance. So that is one. And all the world over, spouses have supported one another in very noble deeds. If you take our recent, let's say, demise of parliamentarians and what have you. It is their spouses that have been the first choice. I mean, the first point of call, who have come, to lift up, the kind works or the noble deed, of their counterparts in making sure that at least the community where they live still have the benefit of the good works of their, deceased spouses. So that is one. It is unfounded. I would say that JoyNews Mensah's suggestion is tongue-in-cheek. Maybe he would have wished to say this long ago, even before the demise of the president. Mm-hmm. He only took the occasion of the demise of President Rawlings, to make his case. Mm. I'll call it a wishful thinking of a detractor, So, as a matter of fact, and it is indeed the spouse who must, live and fulfill what I call the testament, the political testament that Flight Lieutenant Rawlings had left. Right. He is a possession of the nation. I mean, and the former First Lady had supported, President Rawlings in whatever way, that made him, so much cherished.
We'll come back to how it will impact on your campaign proper. But I just heard you say that he is the possession of the nation.
That's right.
That is, he's the property of the state.
Exactly.
So what do you make of the controversy surrounding where he ought to be buried? There are those who say that he's a royal, he comes from Anlo, he must be buried there, and others who argue that no, he is a former commander of the armed forces, he must be buried at the military cemetery, especially because he's a soldier. What do you make of the controversy
to begin with this, let's praise the president of the nation, that's Nana Akufo-Addo, for, as a matter of fact, taking it up and saying that as a statesman, his funeral, burial, and everything associated with sending him off is, the duty of the state. So we have also heard, the NDC also making a claim. The issue is that if it were not even for the state or the president to have made that declaration, one would have asked that, probably why did the president not, state how the state was going to give the former president a fitting send-off. I mean, between a political party, which might not be totally national in character, and the state, between the two, of course, it's more befitting for the state to undertake to send the former president off in a more dignified way, rather than, on partisanship, which will be the NDC. So that is one. And then two, I think the president has made it clear that, of course, the wish of the family will be taken into consideration. So, why the argument about whether, whether the former president was a royal and must be buried maybe in his hometown or within the military estate, square or whatever, that, for me, does not arise at all. The most important thing is that he must first be accorded that dignity he deserves as a statesman, and, not even to look at his burial and funeral service, in a partisan way, because seriously, the vision that he came to live for has nothing to do with partisanship. He had an impassioned vision for which this Fourth Republic had lived for 28 years. All
right, let's go back to the issue about the suggestions for Nana Akufo-Addo Rawlings to withdraw from the race. We know Nana Akufo-Addo Rawlings to be very, aggressive, very tough talking. She doesn't back down easily. But she is human. She is grieving, the death of her husband. So these suggestions for her to withdraw, there are split opinions on it. But how is that going to affect your campaign? The fact that she has lost her husband, she's grieving, how will that affect the NDP's campaign?
Well, thank you very much. I think that is a known fact that the shock and the disbelief of the demise of the first president affected everybody. Certainly, the family will be the most hit. It will take some time. At least everybody will come to terms with whatever has happened. But the issue of, having to withdraw, and that will be in a sign of fond memory, respect, or whatever, lies neither here nor there.
Okay.
The issue is that, as a matter of fact, she herself has been, a statesman as well. And the point is that if there is any time ever for her to, let's say, lift up what I call the political testament of her spouse, then it is now. As far as we are concerned in the party, we are working. We are doing all we can.
So you're campaigning?
Yes. Apart from the fact that, we are all observing the 7-day halt in political activities. That is quite natural.
So when will Nana Konadu hit the campaign trail?
Even if she doesn't do so, we have, party, national executive individuals who were standing for her.
It's not likely for us to see her hit the campaign trail anytime soon?
It's possible. Why not? It's possible.
We have about 21 days to the election.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
That's 3 weeks.
Yes, even if it is a day. And even if she doesn't at all, we're still standing for her.
How is the party going to prosecute its agenda of campaigning for votes to win the election if the flag bearer is not at the forefront of the campaign? Well, the
flag bearer does not necessarily have to be everywhere. I don't think there's any requirement for that. It is us as NEC, who will be doing.
You don't think that it's necessary for her to be visible on the campaign?
It will have been a plus, but she is highly visible already, very marketable. You don't need, to say that you don't need to introduce her anywhere. As a matter of fact, her posters alone are sufficient, and that is exactly what we are doing. We are sending her posters all over. As a matter of fact, there are communities who are even asking, just bring her poster. And that is exactly what we're doing. Fortunately, that is why we, had to put her up once more as a flag bearer, because of her visibility and the enormous work that she has done for this country.
Okay, be that as it may, we're about 3 weeks to the election.
Exactly.
Even though a lot of the parties have suspended their campaigns just for 7 days,
yes.
And still that we're all looking ahead to the elections.
Exactly.
What's the NDP's chances?
Well, as for chances, any competitor, in any race is very hopeful.
Right.
We are very hopeful. And we are very happy that even though our participation this year had come with this grief that we are all going through, it is very well with us. Well with us that, when it comes to still propagating the ideals, the entire nation is confronted with what I call a double-ended political puzzle, that our inspirer had left, that's the former president. We are happy that at least we are engaged, in this whole process, to further propagate, the ideals, of the former president, as a party that he has inspired. Right. Definitely we draw a lot of inspiration, from his vision.
All right.
And we really don't mind, even if the flag bearer, does not show up on stages.
Okay, we'll have to wrap up the conversation here. But thank you so much. That was Alaji Frimpong. He's a General Secretary of the NDP. You're still watching Election Brief. Now, former Attorney General and Foreign Minister during the Rawlings administration, Dr. Obed Yao Asamoah, has cast doubt on the possibility of NDC presidential candidate John Dramani Mahama winning the December 7 general elections. Mr. Asamoah believes that given the tendency by Ghanaians to allow governing parties 2 terms each, it would have been better if Mr. Mahama has stepped back to allow someone else to contest the flag bearership slot of the party. He's been explaining this and many more to my colleague, Benjamin Akapo.
I you know, and I told him so. I told Mr. John Mahama, for example, that I thought it would have been better for him to let the NDC elect a different person. You see, because if you have to look at the pattern of voting in Ghana, there is a tendency for the population to give each party at least 2 terms.
Right.
So JJ had 2 terms, Kufuor had 2 terms, Mills and John had 2 terms. So the likelihood, is that President Akufo-Addo will get 2 terms.
Right.
Now, if he's going to get 2 terms, then the next term for NDC would be 2024.
Right.
And if you have a different person now, that person will be marketed enough so that by 2024 he will be a household name.
Right.
Yeah, so that for me would have been the best way to approach it.
So
but
it would have been better for John Dramani Mahama, from where you sit, not to have contended again?
From my point of view, he should not. Because assuming he goes and loses now, what's going to happen? In 2024, when we have a better chance, we are going to now market a new face.
Dr. Obed Asamoah has also been eulogizing former President Jerry John Rawlings. He says the toughness and disciplinarian nature of the late president impacted greatly on the country's economy. According to him, the late president's strictness was very necessary for his governance.
I think that his toughness was necessary, you know, to maintain some discipline in the society. And don't forget, you've got to look at the state of the economy and the state of the politics at the time he came in. At the time he came in, if you remember, there was absolutely nothing in the market. You couldn't buy anything. There was nothing. And you remember those were the days when everybody was kind of had his eyes glued on essential commodities. They didn't exist. He's coming in and then having Professor Bochwe as the finance minister, and then having the structural adjustment program. That is what began to set the economy right. Instead of relying as previously on control prices. You know, when you control prices in an economy, everything goes wrong. You've got to allow prices to be controlled by market forces. You know, and I think what we are having now, the system we are having now, was made possible by JJ coming into the picture. And on the political front as well, you know, he also wanted probity and accountability. But apart from that, he wanted some discipline. Initially, his revolution brought about some indiscipline because there were some soldiers that were indisciplined. They thought it was an occasion for them to wield power. And then, of course, the concept of the cadres, you know, which was necessary because that is what really enabled his regime to be stable.
He also added that Mr. Rawlings' achievement cannot be compared to any other leader in the Fourth Republic.
In terms of the transformations, I think he is, yes, he would go down as the best we've had so far. I mean, apart from Nkrumah. Nkrumah certainly was a towering, personality. But after him, I think JJ's transformation of the society was, quite impressive. The Keda Corps, for example, were interfering with management of industries, management of businesses, and that sort of thing. It led to considerable indiscipline, something which he had to deal with. So he had to deal with the indiscipline of soldiers and discipline of the cadres. But in the end, he succeeded, and finally moved to a situation that we have now, where we have a stable civilian government, constitutional government. I think that, you know, nobody can compare with him in terms of his achievements on these fronts.
Let's stay on Mr. Rawlings. And former Deputy Secretary for Culture and Tourism during the Rawlings administration has advised people who worked with the late head of state in the military rule era to write their own account of events. According to Professor A.C. Sutherland Addy, the different accounts of what occurred during the statesman's tenure in power will give Ghanaians a full impression of his governance. Professor Sutherland Addy, speaking on The Probe with Emefa Apau, said accounts of the military rule have not been fully told because people were busy working without documenting.
For an era as turbulent as this was, I think that, you know, all or as many people who are involved in it as possible should be writing to give a full impression, because we were working without, you know, really documenting, and that is necessary. I don't know about the timing of the release of the book, but, you know, I don't know and about the details, but this is the point I want to make as far as that book is concerned.
Okay. Her comment follows the release of Professor Kwame Nahouai's book, Working with Rawlings, which caused some controversy after his account of events was challenged by many, including Mr. Rawlings. Professor Sutherland Addy said, although she has not read the book, she understands that it was not an easy task for someone to work under the former president, but said Mr. Rawlings gave his appointees the opportunity to transform the country regardless of the military excesses at the time. On her part, former Minister of Trade and Industry under the erstwhile Jerry John Rawlings administration, Emma Mitchell, said she resigned from her position because of her opposing views with the late statesman. Emma Mitchell admitted that although she was proud to serve under his leadership, working with the late leader had its challenges, some of which led to her decision to step aside from her role in government.
You had asked whether everything was rosy.
Or you just didn't want to speak ill of the dead.
Yes, that is our tradition. We don't speak ill of the dead. But we did have our differences at some stage. And with the differences which happen in any relationship, I thought the best way was to opt out of the administration. And knowing
what happened? What was the difference? Because it was an exit that many still want to find out.
Differences in views, differences about an issue. So I opted out.
This is a public issue. This issue about some money is involved, we are told.
I said some of these you can read later.
In your memoir.
There was a very strong difference. And later on, after I opted out, he tried to get me back. I was already out of the country. And knowing the way he was, after some time, he realized what I stood for. And I believe he respected my view and respected the move I took to opt out.
You're still watching Election Brief with me, Araba Kumsing. We have a lot more coming up, including the youth's perspective on the man popularly known as JJ. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us here on Election Brief. Now, oftentimes when we are sharing perspectives and memories about the former president, Jerry John Rawlings, we hear from the elderly and the middle-aged. But let's hear now from the youth, the future leaders. What do they know about the late former president, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, before and after his death? We have some young politicians for this discussion joining us via Zoom. We have Ira Adams Karim. She's a former student leader. Benjamin Alpha Edu, communications professional. Abdul Rahim Na, member of the Political Campaign Archives and the GIJ. And Kabu Nate, political communications strategist and author of A President in Exile. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Arma. Thank you, Arma, for having us.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Arma.
Thank you for joining us. Now, as I said before, oftentimes when we're talking about former President Rawlings and we're sharing perspectives and memories, you usually hear from elderly persons. You heard from Obeda Samwa, you heard from former Trade Minister Emma Mitchell, you heard from former Tourism Minister A.C. Sutherland Addy. But we never hear from the youth, and justifiably so. I mean, I'm sure many of you were not born at the time that he had started ruling this country. So, first of all, what were some of the things, all of you can go around this question. Each of you can take the question. What were some of the things you heard about Mr. Rawlings growing up? Let's start with Karim.
All right, thank you very much. Good afternoon to lovely viewers all over Ghana. And I want to take this opportunity as well to express my deepest condolences to the family of the former president. Well, for me as a young man growing up, I heard a lot of positive stuff about the former president. First and foremost being the fact that he was a disciplinarian, someone who was principled and wanted the right thing done, and someone who was equally passionate about his country and passionate about the continent, and wanted to see Ghana progress, wanted to see Africa progress. So as a young man, these were some of the things that I heard about Rawlings. And fortunately for me, my father happened to have worked, with him during the PNDC era, up until when the NDC as a party started as well. And so most of these stories about Rawlings I heard from my father growing up as a young man. And for me, that is when I, started developing that much love for him as a person.
I see. Let's turn to you, Kabunate. What about you? What are your memories? What do you remember about Rawlings growing up?
A big condolence to the bereaved family. And however, I also had some not a little to say about the former president and then how he came into contact with my father and family. My home spoke quite critical of the former leader, also because my father was a victim, the Kalabule victim of the coup. And so I had quite discouraging stuff. But having searched history and also embarked on this writing project, I got to find out some aspects of him which I really enjoyed as a revolutionary leader, one who wanted to purge a system which was fraught with corruption. But it doesn't take away how controversial, the comment I was hearing of him. Also because many say that he lost control over an exercise that he said it was for a good cause. And many people were taking advantage of the process to settle scores with individuals they had issues with. So my home was quite critical, but I stated in my article, just to prelude the publishing of the book, that he was exonerated because of the many interesting revelations I came across.
Benjamin Alpha, now, I mean, a lot of people know him as Dr. Boom because every time he opens his mouth to speak, something controversial comes out. What are your own memories growing up? What do you remember growing up about Mr. Rawlings?
Thank you. Good afternoon to the other brilliant colleagues on the line. First of all, I received the news with a lot of dissonance. I mean, I couldn't believe it because I thought it was one of those usual hoax and fake news that people pass around. And then later in the day, I saw that most of the online portals and the major portals were reporting it, and I had to come to terms with it. But my dissonance and disbelief stemmed from the fact that growing up, Rawlings had always been a present character, in the life of Ghanaian politics. And I remember very well growing up as a young boy in Dabuase, a town close to Takrady. Whether it was, I think it was a political rally or a commissioning, Rawlings came around with a helicopter. That was the first time I was seeing a helicopter, so the memory never goes away. And you could see the charisma and the enigma around the man at the time, and the way the whole town was taken over by military and all of that. So growing up, I always saw him on television. I always saw him to be the president. He was an invincible character to me, somebody that thinking as a kid could never die or could never pass away. So it was a shock to me. I dreaded this day. I never wanted it to happen.
Right.
Because it has been a very big part of my upbringing as a young boy, and it was a difficult news to receive. And I'm not surprised that the whole nation and indeed the entire globe is in such a state of mourning and reflecting on his legacy and his impact.
Okay. Let me come to you, Abdul Rahim. Now, I'm sure that you share the sentiments that your colleagues are also saying, but I want to know from you what lessons you've picked from him as a politician. I mean, he encouraged volunteerism, but for you personally, what are some of the principles that, you know, you've picked from him as a politician?
Growing up, for me personally, I think that the greatest of lessons I learned from Jerry Rawlings were all from my dad. My dad actually loved him so much, and I remember in the early 2000s when J.J. Rawlings came to Madina Zungu for Zungu Junction for a rally for the National Democratic Congress. My dad made sure that he carried me on his neck so I could see J.J. Rawlings. So ever since, I'm not sure I've ever had a personal interaction with the man until now that he's gone. And so for me, the lessons I learned from Jerry John Rawlings is that for me that young people can take up the shaping of their country if they really want to. And this was a young force who had just noticed that there were things that were wrong with the nation, and in his own perspective, he had to correct them. In less than 4 months, in what he called house cleaning exercise, he made sure that he put the nation in a path he thought was good, and then give it back to a democratic rule. And then a few years down the line, he comes back again and takes it up. This time around, he lasts for 19 years, 4 months. And so for me, the greatest lesson I learned from this is that no matter where we're born, no matter who we are, we have to take active participation in the development of our country, and make sure that whatever decision that is taken, if we think that is not in the best interest of the young people and the future of our country, we speak about it and take action against it.
Right. Karim, let me come back to you. Now, one thing a lot of people who work with him say is that he never shied away from hard work and volunteerism. And we saw videos of him, you know, going into gutters, cleaning gutters with, you know, the people whose mandate it was to be cleaning the gutters. We're not seeing that in the young people of today. What do you think the problem is?
Well, I think that I always say that leadership is about service. It's not just about occupying an office and wearing a suit and a tie and driving in a Land Cruiser every day, but it's about seeing to the fact that the daily, challenges that the people face are being solved, and that can only be done when the leader takes initiative himself. One of the challenges that I have found with a lot of young people today who seek to get into leadership or who are serving in various leadership capacities is that they do not seek to get into these places to serve the people, but then to serve themselves. They look at all the goodies that, the various leadership opportunities present to them. So if he wants to become a member of parliament or he wants to become a minister of state today, it's about what he's going to get as a member of parliament, what benefits he's going to get as a minister of state, and not what impact he's going to make in the lives of the people. And for me, that is what I see. That self-seeking attitude, that selfishness among lots of young people today, and not that zeal, that willingness to first of all take the first step and demonstrate to the people how things are supposed to be done in order to get them to do it.
Okay, leadership by example. Very well. Let's talk about his legacy. Kabu Nate, you're still with me. What do you think Rawlings' legacy will be?
Rawlings' legacy will be to get the youth to be responsible and responsive to their society and economy. If you read his story, very touching, this was a young soldier in the army who felt that a lot of corruption issues were happening. People could not get food commodity to feed on. Perhaps the elites were the ones doing well in a rather bourgeoisie, society. And so he said that we need to stand up. Rawlings stood up for the poor. Now that was being responsive to his time. He didn't complain. He demonstrated it. However radical or controversial is another day, but that is a legacy that Rawlings stood for. He was also responsive in the sense that when he realized that he was going out of leadership or he was getting perhaps power drunk, he said, you know what, let me embrace, civilian government. And that is what the youth must learn from this very legacy that Rawlings, left us behind. Of course, there are many policies you touch on from the Constitution, economic recovery programs, very tangible in our economy. But for me, the very thing that immortalizes him in the minds and hearts of the young Ghanaian is that we've got to be responsive to our times. stand up when we have to stand up, and then allow for, tempers to come when you have to do. And perhaps we have to see the next J.J. Rawlings, perhaps after the next Kwame Nkrumah over time.
All right. And Benjamin Alpha, what about you? What do you think his legacy will be? What will it take to have people, exhibiting those traits that former President Rawlings had?
But I very much share in the sentiment of my colleagues about the fact that Rawlings epitomizes the need for young people to stand up and make a change. I mean, this was what, in 79, he was what, a 32-year-old army officer who identified a critical need to step up and rescue the country, as it were, from the issues of corruption and all of that. I mean, we know of the excesses of that whole action, and we know that times are not the same. I mean, times are not the same, but the value we pick from that is the value of courage, the ability to stand up to the plate when it matters. And for me, that is a very instructive thing. I think that kind of courage is missing in the young people of today. We are so fixated with our own progress without seeing that our progress is tied into the general progress of the society. So that's one. Number two, I think one of the very phenomenal things that Rawlings did, that as a young military officer who was, barely schooled, I think after Achimota, I do not know of his next educational qualification, he was able to bring together a very good team of academics, of technocrats. I mean, you could talk about the likes of Dr. Beda Samoa, Professor Kwesi Bode, and all of that. You could see the vision and the intelligence there, even though he was not schooled. And for me, that is a mark of somebody who is very visionary, somebody who likes teamwork and all of that. And finally, I think one thing that we can all learn from the Rawlings legacy is that he was fighting for an egalitarian society. He wanted both the poor and the rich, a class divide to be bridged. And we could talk about the excesses of all the measures he took, but the values in there is that as government, as young people, as a society, we must push to make sure that the poor, the downtrodden in society.
He definitely fought for a just society. Brilliant perspectives there from the young people. Those were Iradams Karim, former student leader, Benjamin Alpha Edu, communications professional, Abdul Rahim Na, member of Political Campaign Archives, GIJ, and Kabunate, political communication strategist and author of A President in Exile. Thank you very much for your time, gentlemen. You're still here on Election Brief with me, Arba Kumsin. We're taking a very short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. It's now time to hear from you, the voters, on Voters' Voice. And today we are at the Asafo Market.
Yeah, twaso. Twa twaso ne say. Nana ba ye. What the free education aba. Health insurance wa ye ye. Teacher allowance wa de aba. Nurses allowance wa de aba. Na me kura de ekmenya kana na transfer 4 years.
Twaso. Nana drobo eni mo papa wa ya mo my Ghana. Ye ni mi de onye why yeah, the same phone call in that. I don't quite a kumero. It's another word, dear said, Bium. Yeah, twaso, yeah, twaso, yeah, twaso. Former Nana, obey the BMA fee, free education. Oh, we're free. Yeah, news, oh, sorry, I know a far bag and over. Now, coffee, yeah, no, so free, can you free? It's in another 4 more to do more. Yeah, Lady Nabano. Asafo Market, any a war. Asafo Market, any a war. Sibia, memory. Asafo Market, any a war. Sibia, a city market, yes, no. A red and yaman anado. A son, anado, for education. Yes, light bay free, water bay free, yes, any free, you're free. Nadia, I am the crown, say, Sa Ulmano. What if you am a get? Yes, if I'm an empana. Nana Mabiasa. Yes, Miss Media do. David, I bet my bassa. It's the best kind of what I could say, the best kind of one. David, God is cancer goodbye when you're it's a famano. At the end, I say, the new say, number one, and former to be and so the whole way, I know you, yeah, the light will free. Yes, I check what an interest. Yes, I won't say, I quite say, oh, now, Pope, Babasana, Nana Baba, Nana Quasso, Nana Quasso, I'm before you, I'm on Quasso. He can, yeah, what he can, and I could follow.
So those were some voters in Asafo Market in the Ashanti region. Now, deaths by road accidents have increased by 9% this year compared to the same period last year. That's according to the Road Safety Authority. Speaking on the AM show on the JoyNews channel, Executive Director of the authority, Engineer May Obriyeboa, indicated that accidents often increase in election years. This year, accidents have already increased by 6%. Madame Obriyeboa is therefore urging political parties to use their influence to help reduce road crashes, especially in the lead-up to the elections.
In seasons like this, especially years that we've had elections, right from the Fourth Republic, we have statistics and it has shown clearly that those years that we do have elections have had higher crashes and sometimes even deaths as compared to the preceding year. And through from 1992 all the way to the year, I have to the year 2016. If you look at the trend, it shows only 2 years, that is 2008 and 2016, that relatively we had less crashes. 2008, we had 11,214 crashes, as against 12,038 in the year 2007. And then in the year 2016, we had 8,651, as against 9,796 in the year 2015. The years that we have political seasons or we have election, we take the political parties through this code for them to understand. It addresses the drivers and how the tax that is ahead of them. The political parties are supposed to have champions, somebody who will champion the cause of road safety on our behalf, and also how to bus their supporters when they go, what they have to do, not driving tired, planning their journeys, etc. So there's a code to that. And our regional officers have, in fact, almost all of them have completed it. They've gone to their various, you have constituency and the regional, etc. But the national one comes off tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, because we thought that yes, we've gone to the regions, but at least the national people also need to know, or we have to remind them of it, because the main day is also coming. That's the 7th of December.
Now, let's turn our attention on the Subin constituency, and the Member of Parliament for that area, Eugene Boatry Entry, is fighting off claims there's voter apathy in his constituency, which will affect his re-election bid. Some aggrieved supporters within the constituency were outraged over the party's decision to organize parliamentary primaries in spite of a court injunction. The aggrieved delegates believe the move was a deliberate attempt by the MP to impose himself on the constituents. But the MP says the party is more than united for victory in the upcoming polls. There's more in this report.
Supporters of the governing NPP within the Subin constituency and the MP for the area, Eugene Boatry Entry, over the weekend embarked on a health walk to canvass vote for the party. They marched through the principal streets of Edum, Asafo and Stadium, calling on the electorate there to retain President Akufo-Addo. The NP, who says his target in this year's election is obtaining 90% of the valid vote cast, rejected claims that apathy among some delegates who were disgruntled during the parliamentary primaries would make his target impossible.
There are no issues around the primaries. The party date was set. The party fell. About 5 people.
The nation was taken to court.
5 people purchased nomination forms. 2 were disqualified before, after vetting. Another 1 was disqualified after appeal. And then 2 of us, myself and Mr. J.B. Dankwa, were allowed to contest. Right? On the day, I polled 485 votes, which is about 73% of the votes. Mr. J.B. Dankwa obtained 166 votes. So there was an election. Yes, I mean, if there was an election, I would have obtained the 785 votes in total. In terms of the codes, I don't want to talk about it. Yes, but that's behind us. But all I can say is that today, you've witnessed it for yourself. You guys enjoy, the sensationalism and the gossip and the rumor and what have you. I'm not going to give you that. I'm not going to give you that benefit today. Today, it's been a good day for the constituency. That's what we are focusing on. It's been a very fantastic day. To have 2 solid giants in the party, 2 former members of parliament coming to throw their weight behind today, I think it's all we are looking forward to.
The 90% is possible for you. 90% tenor.
Are you a politician?
No, I'm asking.
I'm telling you, I'm going to obtain 90. You are saying, is it possible?
The NP, who is also the Deputy Minister for Works and Housing, asked the electorate to renew his mandate based on his superior track record in the last 4 years.
Since independence, in terms of infrastructural achievements, since independence, listen to my words carefully, since 1957, in terms of infrastructural achievements, this is my first term. Subin has seen monumental infrastructural achievement, electoral area by electoral area. That this is in spite of what the government has done in terms of Kumasi Airport, Kumasi Inner City Roads, the Central Market Phase 2, and Konfanochi Maternity Block. In terms of achievements, looking across the road, I'm on Kwatia School. You have 2 classrooms in the kindergarten block. A 10-seater modern flash toilet twice, 1 on the left, 1 on the right. That's 20-seater modern flash toilet. We have an ICT center being built. The 3 classroom block has just been built and commissioned. These are some that it's just across the road. And I'm going to walk you through the constituency ward by ward, in electoral by electoral area. You'll be amazed. So when people talk about apathy, where is the apathy?
And that's a wrap for Election Brief for today. Join us same time tomorrow. I'm Arbor So remember, Election Brief comes to you each weekday, kind courtesy of Petrosol. Have a good afternoon.